I never thought a single gunshot would rewrite my entire life. But there it was, crackling through the humid Georgia night like God's own thunder, dropping my father face first into the sawdust of his own sawmill. "Justin, run!" my mother screamed from the porch, her voice raw as the shotgun she'd grabbed too late. But I was already frozen, staring at the pool of blood seeping into the earth. The family legacy we'd built from nothing, now just a stain. In that instant, as a rival mill owner's shadow vanished into the pines, I knew our empire was crumbling, and the only way to save it was to chain myself to the very people who'd pulled the trigger. The funeral was a circus of Southern hypocrisy, black veils, and whispered condolences from folks who'd secretly cheered my old man's downfall. My mother, Evelyn Hargrove, clung to my arm like a lifeline, her eyes puffy but sharp, calculating every handshake. We were the Hargroves of Savannah, owners of the biggest timber operation south of Atlanta. But Dad's death had left us teetering on bankruptcy. Creditors circled like vultures, and the bank's family, those smug bastards from the next county over, had been encroaching on our land for years. Their patriarch, Harlan Banks, had even sent condolences with a not-so-subtle offer: merge our mills, or watch ours burn. That's how I ended up at the bank's sprawling estate 2 weeks later, sweat beading under my starch collar despite the AC blasting like a blizzard. Harlan was a bull of a man, all whiskey breath and calloused hands, but his eyes gleamed with the kind of predatory glee that made my stomach twist. "Justin, son," he boomed, clapping me on the back hard enough to rattle my teeth. "Tragedy like yours, it don't have to end in ruin. Marry my Emily, seal the deal with the families, and we'll make this the greatest timber dynasty the South ever saw." Emily. God, she was beautiful in that fragile, porcelain doll way, blonde waves cascading over a sundress that screamed old money, her smile polite but distant, like she was reading lines from a script. We'd met once at a debutante ball years ago, when I was just a gangly kid dodging cotillion dances, and she'd been the queen bee everyone orbited. Now, at 28, she looked every bit the heiress, but there was a flicker in her green eyes, a quiet desperation that mirrored my own. Our parents had orchestrated this like a business merger, dowry and land deeds, vows in exchange for loans. Refuse, and the banks would foreclose on our debts, leaving Mom penniless and me scraping by in some dead-end job. I said yes that night over bourbon and barbecue, the words tasting like ash. Mom wept tears of relief in the car ride home, murmuring about legacies and second chances. But I just stared out at the Spanish moss draping the live oaks like funeral shrouds. What kind of man sells his soul for a sawmill? The kind who's got nothing left but ghosts, I supposed. The engagement party was a lavish affair at the bank's riverfront plantation, white tents strung with fairy lights, fiddlers playing Sweet Georgia Brown, while guests in seersucker suits and floral gowns sipped sweet tea spiked with vodka. I nursed a whiskey neat, nodding through toasts about unity and prosperity, my tie feeling like a noose. Emily floated through the crowd, gracious as ever, but her hand in mine was cool, detached. We hadn't kissed yet, not really. Just a peck for the photographers, staged like everything else. That's when I first really saw him. Scott Banks, Emily's older brother, the golden boy who'd skipped town for Yale and now ran the family's logging tech division from some high-rise in Atlanta. He was leaning against a column on the veranda, cigarette dangling from his lips, watching the party with the bored amusement of someone who'd long outgrown it. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that effortless wasp charm, blonde hair tousled just so, blue eyes sharp enough to cut glass. He caught me staring and smirked, flicking his ash into the azaleas. You look like a man at his own execution. Hargrove, he drawled, voice low and laced with that Atlanta drawl that made everything sound like a secret. I laughed despite myself. To sound rusty. Feels like it. Your sister's too good for this circus. He arched a brow, stepping closer. The scent of his cologne, something crisp, like cedar and citrus, cutting through the magnolia blooms. Emily's tougher than she looks. But you're the wild card here. Dad's got big plans for you, too. Ever think about bolting? The question hung there, loaded. I shrugged, glancing back at the tent where Harlan was holding court, his laugh booming over the crowd. And go where? This is home. Or what's left of it. Scott nodded slowly, like he saw right through me. And for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just us, the river murmuring behind him, fireflies winking in the dusk. Then Emily called my name, waving me over for a photo op, and the spell shattered. But as I walked away, I felt his eyes on my back, a weight that was equal parts thrill and terror. The wedding planning blurred into a haze of tasteless consultations and fittings. Emily and I met weekly at a neutral cafe in Savannah, poring over guest lists and floral arrangements like co-conspirators in a heist. She confessed one afternoon, stirring her latte with unnecessary vigor, that she'd always dreamed of a quiet life, maybe teaching literature at some small college, not playing timber baroness. But family, she said, her voice cracking just a fraction. It's all we have. I squeezed her hand, genuine sympathy twisting in my gut. Yeah, all we have. Scott showed up unannounced a few times, always with some excuse, dropping off contracts from Atlanta, scouting properties for the merger. But it was the way he'd linger, drawing me into conversations about everything and nothing, the best dive bars in Savannah, the hypocrisy of Southern charm, how the logging industry was dying slow under green regs. He had this laugh, deep, unguarded, that made my chest ache, and I'd catch myself staring at the way his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms tanned from weekend hikes, veins standing out like rivers on a map. One evening, after a particularly brutal venue tour, who knew choosing between antebellum mansions could feel like choosing your poison, he drove us back to the Banks estate in his sleek black Jeep, Emily dozing in the passenger seat from exhaustion. The sun was dipping low, painting the marshes gold, and Scott cranked up some old Bruce Springsteen. Thunder Road, filling the cab with its gritty promise of escape. You ever feel like you're just chasing someone else's dream? He asked, eyes on the road, but voice pitched low, like it was just for me. All the time, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could cage them. Dad's ghost won't shut up about legacy. Mom's counting on this marriage like it's the second coming. And me? I'm just trying not to drown. He glanced over, that smirk softening into something real, vulnerable. I get it. Dad's got me on a leash, too. Family first, he says, like we're still in the goddamn 19th century. Emily's the good soldier. Me? I'm the fuck-up who questions it all. The Jeep hummed to a stop at a overlook, the Ashley River sprawling below like molten silver. Emily stirred but didn't wake. Scott killed the engine, and the silence stretched, thick with unspoken things. What if we just drove? He said finally, half joking, but his fingers drummed the wheel like he meant it. Screw the merger. Head west. See the Pacific. Start over. My heart slammed against my ribs. You first. Banks. Show me how it's done. He turned then, fully, and the look he gave me, intense, searching, lit something feral inside. Our knees brushed on the console, accidental but electric, and neither of us moved away. For a split second, I imagined it, his hand on my thigh, pulling me across the gear shift, the taste of rebellion on his tongue. But Emily sighed in her sleep, and reality crashed back. Yeah, I muttered, forcing a grin. West sounds good. Someday. That night, alone in my childhood bedroom with Dad's old pocket watch ticking on the nightstand, I couldn't sleep. Scott's words looped in my head, his proximity a ghost under my skin. I'd always known I was gay, whispers in high school locker rooms, a fumbling kiss at a frat party in college that I'd buried deep. But this was a grenade in a powder keg. Emily deserved better than a husband who'd rather stare at her brother than her. And Scott. Christ, what if he felt it too? The thought terrified me, thrilled me, made me want to puke. Weeks turned to months, the wedding date looming like a storm front. Publicly, Emily and I were the perfect couple. Brunch dates splashed in the Savannah Morning News. Her head on my shoulder at charity galas. Privately, we were allies, sharing late-night confessions over takeout Chinese, her fear of losing herself in the family machine, my guilt over the lies piling up like cordwood. We'll make it work, she'd say, optimistic to a fault. Partners in crime. Scott became the wild card in our uneasy truce. He'd text me memes about corporate greed or invites to impromptu fishing trips on the river. Emily's buried in spreadsheets. Come keep me company. I'd go. Every time. Telling myself it was harmless. We'd cast lines into the murky water. Beers sweating in the cooler. Talking philosophy and politics until the stars wheeled overhead. One night, after too many IPAs, he admitted he'd come out to the family years ago. Awkward Thanksgiving. Harlan's face turning the color of boiled shrimp. But they'd accepted it in that conditional Southern way. As long as it stays quiet. Quiet, I echoed, baiting my hook with a worm that squirmed like my conscience. That's the killer, isn't it? Always hiding. He reeled in a catch, a fat catfish thrashing, and released it back with a grin. Some things are worth the quiet. Others, you gotta fight for the noise. His eyes met mine over the lantern light. And there was again, that pull, magnetic and merciless. I wanted to tell him everything, the farce of the engagement, the way his laugh haunted my dreams, how I'd killed to trace the line of his jaw. Instead, I cracked a joke about Harlan's toupee, and we laughed it off. But as I drove home, windows down to the cricket chorus, I knew the dam was cracking. The bachelor party was Harlan's idea, a boys' weekend at a hunting lodge in the Okefenokee Swamp. Alligators lurking in the fog like bad omens. A dozen guys from both families, shotguns and stories. But Scott and I gravitated together, nursing whiskeys by the fire pit while the others swapped tall tales of conquests and kills. Harlan cornered me early, his breath sour. Son, this merger's more than business. It's blood. You hurt my Emily, and I'll bury you deeper than your daddy. The threat landed like a gut punch, but I nodded, jaw clenched. Wouldn't dream of it. Sir, later, as the party devolved into drunken karaoke, someone belting friends in low places off-key, Scott pulled me aside to the dock, the swamp air thick with peat and possibility. You okay? Dad's got that look like he's measuring you for a coffin. I leaned on the railing, the wood rough under my palms. He's right to worry. This whole thing, it's a house of cards. Scott. And I'm the idiot holding the fan. He stood close, too close, the heat of him cutting the chill. Then blow it down. Emily doesn't love you. Justin. Not like that. And you. You deserve more than a transaction. My breath hitched. What if more isn't on the table? What if I'm just broke it? He finished, voice soft. His hand landed on my shoulder, thumb brushing my neck in a way that wasn't brotherly, wasn't accidental. Fireworks exploded in my veins. You're not broken. You're just scared. Like me, the kiss happened fast, desperate, inevitable. His lips on mine, tasting of bourbon and brine. Hands fisting my shirt as I backed him against the railing. It was everything I'd imagined and more. Rough. Tender. A collision of need that drowned out the swamp's croak. We broke apart gasping. Foreheads pressed. The world tilting. "Shit," he whispered, eyes wild. "Justin, we can't. I know, but I didn't let go. Not yet." In that stolen moment, with the fireflies dancing like witnesses, I fell. Hard. For him. For the life we could never have. Guilt hit like a hangover the next morning, head pounding, stomach churning as I packed my truck under Harlan's watchful eye. Emily called on the drive back, bubbly about final dress fittings, oblivious to the bomb ticking in my chest. Scott avoided my gaze at breakfast, but his text came later. "We need to talk." Atlanta. Soon. I deleted it, then undelete. Heart racing. This was betrayal on steroids. Kissing the groom's brother? The forbidden fruit of two feuding dynasties? But denying it felt like dying slow. The weeks before the wedding were a pressure cooker. Mom fussed over my tux, reminiscing about Dad's proposal under the same live oak where we'd bury the time capsule of our union. Emily and I rehearsed vows in her sunroom. Words about forever that tasted like lies. And Scott. He was a ghost in my periphery, a quick coffee in a strip mall, where he'd grip my hand under the table, murmuring apologies and promises. "We'll figure it out." After the wedding, when things settle, but things didn't settle. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I found the letters, tucked in Emily's hope chest, yellowed pages from her college days, passionate scrawls to a woman named Clara, dreams of Paris and poetry slams, signed with swirling hearts. She'd been queer too, hiding it deeper than I ever had, for the same damn reasons. Rage bubbled up, hot and righteous. Not at her, but at us, at the families who twisted love into leverage. I confronted her that evening in the garden, azaleas blooming defiant against the dusk. "Why didn't you say something? We could fight this together." Her face crumpled, tears carving tracks through her makeup. "Because it's not just me, Justin. It's Mom's cancer treatments, Dad's debts. If I bail, they lose everything. And you. God, I thought you wanted this stability. I want freedom," I choked out. For both of us, we sat there till dark, plotting escape hatches, post-wedding. When the ink dried on the merger, we'd annul quietly, blame irreconcilable differences. Scott would help, his tech firm a safety net. It felt like hope, fragile as spun glass. But secrets have a way of shattering. The rehearsal dinner was at a yacht club on the river, candlelight flickering off crystal as toasts flowed like champagne. Harlan droned about legacies. Mom dabbed her eyes. Emily squeezed my knee under the table, a silent "we got this." Scott sat across, his foot nudging mine once, twice, a Morse code of reassurance. Then it happened. A tipsy cousin, egged on by Harlan's eggnog, pulled out his phone. "Y'all hear about that swamp kiss? Saw it on some hunter's Insta story, blurry. But damn if it ain't the groom locking lips with." He trailed off, squinting at the screen. The table fell silent as the video looped, grainy footage from the dock. Scott and me tangled, unmistakable. Gasps rippled. Harlan's face went apoplectic, fork clattering to his plate. "What in the hell?" Mom's hand flew to her mouth, eyes darting between us. Emily froze, color draining from her cheeks, not shock, but sorrow, like she'd known all along. Scott stood first, chair scraping. "Dad, it's not." "Shut your mouth." "Boy," Harlan roared, veins bulging. "You snake." Seducing your sister's fiancé? In my own damn family. The room erupted, shouts, sobs, plate shoved aside. I grabbed Scott's arm, pulling him toward the door. But Harlan blocked us. Shotgun propped by the bar, like a prop from hell. You think you can ruin us? This merger's dead. I'll see you both in the ground. Emily's voice cut through, steady as steel. Stop it, Daddy. It's over because it was never real. Justin and I, we're friends. Pretending. For you, the admission hung. A guillotine blade. Harlan staggered back, clutching his chest. You. All of you. Traitors. Mom wailed, collapsing into a chair. But her eyes on me were steel betrayal. Yes, but underneath, a flicker of release. Justin, how could you? We bolted then, Scott and I, into the muggy night, tires screeching as we peeled out in his Jeep. Emily texted, go. I'll handle the fallout. Be happy. Atlanta swallowed us whole. His apartment a sleek loft overlooking the skyline. All glass and steel. A far cry from Savannah's sticky embrace. We crashed there, tangled in sheets that first night, not in passion but exhaustion. His head on my chest as sobs racked him. Outed us both. Ruined everything. You freed us, I whispered, stroking his hair. The merger crumbled overnight. Headlines screaming, Timber Tycoon feud explodes in scandal. But in the rubble, something bloomed. Emily filed papers quietly, citing personal growth, and started grad school in Charleston, dating a barista with tattoos and a poetry chapbook. Mom sold the mill to a co-op, retired to Florida with a bitter laugh about finally living. Harlan? He suffered a mild heart attack, mellowed enough to send a grudging Christmas card. Blood's thicker. Even when it's messy, Scott and I, we built slow. Hikes in the Appalachians. Brunches where he'd steal my fries. Arguments over politics that ended in make-up kisses under street lamps. It wasn't perfect. Nights when family ghosts haunted us. Days when prejudice from old clients stung like salt in wounds. But it was ours. Real. The kind of love that doesn't shatter plans but rebuilds them from the shards. One crisp October morning, a year to the day after the scandal, we stood in Piedmont Park, leaves crunching underfoot, his hand warm in mine. West, he asked, echoing that old Jeep promise. I pulled him close, forehead to forehead, the city humming around us like a heartbeat. Nah, right here, with you, and for the first time, I believed in forever, not as a chain, but as a choice. The fallout from that video wasn't just a ripple. It was a goddamn tsunami, swallowing reputations and relationships in its wake. By dawn, the clip had gone viral in our corner of the South, shared in group chats from Macon to Mobile, dissected on local talk radio with hosts clucking about the decline of family values. Scott's phone blew up first, colleagues from his Atlanta firm offering awkward support or outright condolences. Harlan's secretary leaving voicemails laced with fury. Mine was quieter at first, just Mom's missed calls, then a single text, call me. Now, I stared at it in the Jeep's glove compartment light. Scott's profile etched silver by passing semis. His jaw set like he was bracing for war. Pull over, he said finally, as we hit the outskirts of Macon, some all-night Waffle House glowing like a beacon. We slid into a booth, syrup sticky menus ignored, and ordered black coffee that tasted like regret. We tell them the truth. All of it, I nodded, but my hand shook as I dialed Mom. Her voice was a wire taut, trembling. Justin Elias Hargrove, you got 5 seconds to explain before I drive down there and drag you home myself. So I did. The whole sordid tale, the forced engagement, the mutual misery with Emily, the spark with Scott that had ignited into something undeniable. She listened in silence, breaths ragged. Then, your father would roll in his grave. Click. Scott reached across, lacing our fingers. She'll come around. They always do. But Harlan didn't. His next move was a cease and desist from some hotshot Savannah lawyer, accusing us of intentional infliction of emotional distress and threatening to tank the merger with leaked docs, painting the Hargroves as desperate frauds. Emily called Scott mid-morning, her voice muffled like she was in a closet. Daddy's raging, smashed the TV. But I told him about the letters. About us both being, bought us time. Time. That's all we had. Really, a grace period before the lawyers descended. We holed up in Scott's loft, a minimalist sanctuary of exposed brick and Eames chairs that felt worlds away from the creaky porches of home. He cooked that first night, pasta primavera from a recipe his mom had taught him, the kind with fresh basil and a story about summers in Tuscany she never actually took. We ate on the balcony, city lights twinkling below, and for a moment, it was easy, his foot hooked around my ankle, laughter bubbling over shared anecdotes about disastrous family Thanksgivings. But the high faded fast. Nightmares clawed me awake, Dad's bloodied shirt, Harlan's shotgun leveled at Scott's chest, and I'd jolt up sweating, only to find him already stirring eggs at dawn. Eyes shadowed. Can't sleep, I'd ask, and he'd shrug, plating food with mechanical precision. Thinking about what comes next. Dad's cut me off. No trust fund. No job. I didn't have an answer. The mill was Mom's now, technically, but she'd frozen my access, leaving me with a dwindling savings and a resume heavy on chainsaws. Light on everything else. We talked options, Scott pitching his startup idea for sustainable logging apps, me floating freelance consulting for eco firms up north. But underneath, the guilt festered. I'd drag him into this, my secrets pulling him under like quicksand. Emily visited a week in, slipping through the lobby like a spy in oversized sunglasses and a ball cap. We met at a hole-in-the-wall taqueria, her picking at carnitas tacos while spilling the homefront drama. Mom's popping Xanax like candy. Daddy's lawyering up, but he's scared, more than angry. Says the family's cursed now. She paused, eyes softening on me. You two look good. Happy. Even. Scott snorted, but there was no bite. Hiding's overrated. Eminencia. Wish you'd figure that sooner. She winced, then reached for my hand. I did. In my way. Claire and I. We talk sometimes. She's in Boston now, writing for some lit mag. Says hi. A beat. Then quieter. Annulment papers are drawn. Sign when you're ready. No hard feelings. We hug goodbye in the parking lot, her car vanishing into traffic like a sigh of relief. Back at the loft, Scott pulled me onto the couch. Movie cued, but ignored, his lips brushing my temple. She's tougher than both of us. Yeah, I murmured. But the ease of it, the way his body fit against mine, solid and sure, stirred that old fear. What if this was just trauma bonding? What if, stripped of the drama, we were strangers? The real test came at month's end, a summons to a family summit at the Banks estate. Neutral ground brokered by Emily. Harlan wanted terms, non-disclosure for the video, a clean break on the merger, no poaching of clients. Mom insisted I go, her voice over speakerphone brittle but resolute. We end this civil. Justin, for your father's sake. Scott drove, knuckles white on the wheel. The 2-hour haul, silent save for NPR droning about climate accords. If he pulls that shotgun shit, he won't, I lied. Stomach nodded. The plantation loomed unchanged, white columns gleaming. River breeze carrying jasmine lies. Harlan waited on the veranda, flanked by Emily and a stone-faced attorney. Mom already there in her pearls, looking like she'd aged a decade. No hugs, no hellos. Straight to the library. Leather-bound books mocking our unraveling. Harlan slid papers across the oak table. Gag orders. Asset splits. Sign. And we pretend this never happened. You too. Do whatever in your godforsaken city. But you don't drag the bank's name through more mud. Scott's laugh was bitter. Or what? You sue us into oblivion? For loving wrong. Love. Harlan spat, face reddening. This ain't love. Boy. It's spite. You couldn't stand seeing your sister happy. So you. Happy. Emily interjected, voice slicing sharp. Daddy, I was miserable. We both were. Justin's my friend, the best I've got. And Scott. He's family. Blood. You don't get to dictate that. Mom cleared her throat. Papers untouched. Harlan. Enough. My boy's no saint. But neither's your vendetta. We merge or we don't. But threats? That's not Savannah. That's ugly. The room teetered. Air thick as storm clouds. Harlan's eyes flicked to me. Then Scott. Hatred warring with something broken. Paternal maybe. You think you can just upend everything? Legacies don't bend for whims. Legacies evolve, I said, voice steady for the first time. Or they die. Like Dad's did. Holding too tight. Silence. Then Harlan deflated, signing with a flourish that trembled. Get out. All of you. We left as allies. Tentative. Mom hugged me fierce in the driveway, whispering, proud of you, son. Finally, Emily slipped Scott a flash drive, backup merger files, use MYs, and winked. Call me for double dates. Driving back. Windows down to the whipping wind. Scott hooped, hand raised for a slap that turned into him pulling over, kissing me senseless on a deserted farm road. We did it, he gasped against my mouth. We're free, but freedom's a tricky bitch. Back in Atlanta, job hunts dragged. Scott's pitch deck rejected by VCs wary of the scandal boy. My interviews laced with side-eye about personal matters. Bills piled. Ramen nights stretched. And the loft's charm soured under fluorescent doubt. One fight escalated ugly, me accusing him of clinging to family ghosts. Him snapping, I was the one running scared. You kissed me first. Justin, own it. I stormed out, wandering midtown bars till last call, nursing a pint and memories of simpler betrayals. A text from an old college buddy, now a recruiter in Chicago, heard about the drama. Need a fresh start? Tempting. But dawn found me on the loft steps. Key turning slow. Scott asleep on the couch with takeout containers for pillows. I slid beside him, arm draping his waist, and whispered apologies into his hair. I'm in. All the way. He stirred, smiling sleepy. Good? 'Cause I'm not letting go. We pivoted then, Scott freelancing code for green startups. Me landing gigs auditing sustainable forestry for NGOs. Small wins. His app beta testing with a co-op in Alabama. My byline in a trade mag on ethical logging. Dates became rituals, Thursdays at the High Museum. Sketching nudes that made us blush and banter. Sundays grilling on the balcony. Plotting a road trip to the Smokies. Still, shadows lingered. Harlan's Christmas card arrived stiff. Unsigned. But Emily's followed. Photos of her and Clara at a holiday market. Caption wishing you the noise. Mom visited in spring, thawing over mimosas. Admitting she'd burned Dad's old ledgers. Time for new stories. The real mending came unexpected. A call from Harlan in July. Voice gruff over static. Heard your boy's app's making waves. Tell him. Good work. No apology. But Scott hung up grinning. Tears pricking. Progress. That fall. As leaves turned. We hiked Stone Mountain. Summit view sprawling endless. He dropped to one knee, not with a ring, but a wildflower crown, crooked and perfect. Marry me? For real this time. Laughter choked my yes, and we tumbled down laughing, planning a courthouse thing with tacos after. No empires, no shotguns, just us building from the ground up. But legacies don't die easy, they fester, waiting for the right storm to unearth them. Ours brewed slow that winter, starting with an innocuous email from Mom. Found this in the attic. Dad journal. Thought you should see. Attached was a scan, yellowed pages in his blocky scrawl, dated months before the murder. Entries about disloyalty in the ranks, vague threats against the snake trying to undercut us, and worst, a crude sketch of Harlan's face, crossed out with red ink. Caption payback's a river. My blood ran cold. Had Dad plotted something? Provoked the shot that ended him? I showed Scott over coffee, his brow furrowing as he scrolled. This could reopen everything, the investigation, the merger fallout. If Harlan sees it, he won't, I said, but doubt not. The old case had been ruled self-defense. Harlan's foreman swearing he'd seen Dad trespassing with a rifle, but whispers had always lingered. Timber wars turned bloody down south. Rivalries settled with lead more than lawyers. I drove to Savannah alone, Scott grounded by a client demo, the coastal highway blurring past like regrets. Mom met me at the old house, now echoey with her packing boxes for the floor to move. She handed over the physical journal, hands steady but eyes haunted. He was unraveling. Justin. Paranoia after the audits showed losses. Blamed everyone, me. You. The banks. We sat on the porch swing, creaking like bones, sweet tea sweating between us. You think he went after Harlan? She sighed, fanning herself with a funeral program from years back. Your father was proud, not stupid, but pride blinds. If that foreman's story was twisted, the what-ifs piled like storm debris. I pocketed the journal, promising discretion, but on the drive back, my mind raced scenarios. Anonymous tip to the DA. Headlines screaming timber murder revisited. Scott and I collateral in a grudge match from the grave. He was waiting with pizza and a six-pack, reading my face like tea leaves. Bad. I spilled it all. Journal thumping on the coffee table like an accusation. We poured over it late, decoding Dad's code, references to the brother that twisted my gut, wondering if he'd sniffed out Scott's orientation years early. Used it as leverage. This family's a minefield, Scott muttered, head and hands. One wrong step. We blow it up ourselves, I decided. Impulsive. Donate it to the Historical Society, anonymous. Let historians pick the bones. He nodded, but tension simmered. Our rhythm frayed. Missed dinners. Curt texts. Nights where I'd wake to him pacing the balcony. Cigarette glow a lone sentinel. It's not just the journal. He confessed one blizzardy February eve. Snow blanketing Atlanta like improbable absolution. It's us. What if we're just the rebound from all that mess? What if real life chews us up? The question gutted me. I'd asked it in mirrors. Post-fight. Staring at the stranger with Dad's jawline and Mom's doubt. Then we fight, I said, pulling him down beside the fire escape heater. Like we always have, but fights escalated, petty at first, over chores or politics. Then deeper, my reluctance to come out fully at a family reunion, Mom's side, bless them, still whispering about that phase. His bitterness at Harlan's radio silence. One screaming match ended with him storming to the spare room, door slamming like finality. I crashed on the couch, scrolling old photos, us at the swamp dock, blurry and blissful, tears hot on my cheeks. Emily called next morning, her voice a lifeline. Heard from Mom you're in town next week? Clara and I are driving down. Girls' weekend turned co-ed. Bring the drama. We'll medicate with margaritas. The reunion was at Tybee Island, a rented beach house with peeling paint and ocean views that humbled hubris. Mom hosted, her new tan glowing, boyfriend in tow, a retired judge with a gentle laugh that coaxed hers out. Emily and Clara arrived with coolers and kayaks. Scott trailing last, duffel slung like armor. We avoided eyes at first, small talk stiff as starch collars. But the salt air worked magic, kayaking doubles where I steered us into waves. His whoops echoing mine, bonfire stories where Clara roasted Harlan's fashion sense, drawing reluctant chuckles. That night, as embers died, Scott and I walked the shore, bare feet sinking in cool sand, bioluminescent plankton sparkling like fallen stars. "I'm sorry," he started, voice rough, "for doubting. It's the only real thing I've got." I stopped, waves lapping ankles, and cupped his face. Me too. Scared shitless, but all in. The kiss was salt sweet. Healing. Moon our only witness. Renewed, we tackled the journal, couriered to a university archive with a fabricated donor note. Concerned descendant. No fanfare. No fallout, just quiet closure. Spring bloomed with green lights. Scott's app landed seed funding from a queer-led VC firm. Touting timber tech for tomorrow, I scored a full-time role with the Forest Service. Remote audits that let us weekend in the hills. But the past circled back vicious in June, a package at the loft. No return address. Harlan's handwriting on the label. Inside, a worn Bible, dog-eared at Proverbs. And a letter. Read this. Then come home. We talk. Scott's face paled. Trap, or truce, I countered, though my pulse thrummed betrayal. We drove down together, Bible on the dash like a talisman, arriving at the plantation under thunderheads. Harlan waited alone on the dock, older, gaunter, shotgun nowhere in sight. Sit, he grunted, gesturing weathered chairs. No preamble, that journal. You're doing, Scott stiffened, but I nodded. Had to. For peace. He huffed, flipping open the book to a verse underlined in faded ink. A soft answer turns away wrath. Your dad and me. We were boys together, scrapping over scraps. He wasn't a killer. Neither was I. But pride? That'll bury you. Tears tracked his cheeks. Unashamed. I pushed Emily into this farce, scared of losing the name. Push you away, cause. Seeing you too, it reminded me what I denied myself young. A boy in boarding school. Buried it deep. Scott's hand found mine under the table. Squeeze fierce. Why tell us now? Cause life's short. Heart attack, scare me straight. Emily's happy, your ma's thriving. You boys, build something. Just don't forget where you came from. We left with hugs, awkward, bone-crushing, and a promise to visit. Driving north, rain sheeting the windshield. Scott laughed wetly. Who saw that coming? Not me, I admitted, but the weight lifted, replaced by possibility. Summer solidified us. Engagement party at the beach house. Low-key with drag queens DJing and Mom toasting to loves that defy. Clara officiated our courthouse vows in August. Rings simple gold bands and grave noise. Honeymoon was a camper van loop through Yellowstone. Geysers erupting like our joy. Yet depth demands shadows. Fall brought Scott's first big conference, Seattle. Tech bros and buzzwords, where a panelist outed our inspirational story without consent, turning us into case study fodder. Backlash hit, trolls doxing the loft, old clients ghosting. Scott spiraled, app downloads tanking under boycott calls. We're freaks now. Exhibit A in the culture wars. I held him through panic attacks, whispering stats on resilient queer founders. But inside, fury boiled at the world, at myself for not shielding him better. We fought again, me pushing therapy, him retreating to code till his eyes bloodshot. Rock bottom was a November night. Rain lashing windows. We packed a bag. Need space. To think if this is sustainable. The door click echoed like goodbye. I didn't chase, curled on the floor instead. Journal's ghost whispering fight or fold. Dawn. I drove to Emily's, crashing on her couch, spilling fears to Clara over dawn yoga. He's scared, she said, but loves the brave part. I texted him, miss your mess. Come home. Hours later, key and lock, bag dropped, arms enveloping. Stupid, he mumbled into my neck. Can't do without you. Therapy followed, joint sessions with a no-nonsense counselor who called our bluff on Southern stoicism. We unpacked my abandonment fears from Dad's death, his internalized shame from Harlan's silence. Progress was messy, tears, triumphs, but we emerged tighter, scars, badges, not burdens. By Christmas, Harlan joined us for dinner, his first, bearing pecan pie and a gruff congrats. Toast clinked to new chapters, Mom beaming beside her judge. As snow dusted the park outside, Scott leaned in, breath warm, worth every shatter. The new year dawned with a deceptive calm. Atlanta's skyline iced in rare frost. Our life a patchwork of routines that felt against odds, like home. Scott's app rebounded, rebranded with a manifesto on inclusive innovation. Downloads surging among progressive firms, while my for-service role expanded to policy advising. Trips to D.C. that had me rubbing elbows with senators who quoted my reports. Success bred security. Loft upgraded to a townhouse in Inman Park, with a backyard garden where Scott planted heirloom tomatoes, declaring, roots, but the kind we choose. Yet beneath the bloom, unease stirred, a whisper from Mom in February. Harlan's selling the plantation. Cancer. Stage 3. The call came mid-commute, her voice fracturing over Bluetooth. Scott white-knuckled the passenger door as I swerved to the shoulder. Details tumbling. Harlan's quiet diagnosis post-heart scare. Treatments draining the estate's coffers. He's stubborn, Mom said. Won't ask for help. But Emily's fraying. We flew down that weekend. Scott silent on the red eye, staring out at cloud banks like they held answers. The plantation felt hollowed, furniture draped. Echoes in halls where laughter once boomed. Harlan was in the study, gaunt in a flannel robe, chemo haze sharpening his eyes. Didn't call you for pity, he rasped, waving off Scott's hug. Just business. The land, yours if you want it. Merge it with that green nonsense you're peddling. Scott knelt, voice thick. Dad, it's not pity. It's family. Harlan's laugh wheezed. Family. Yeah. Screwed that up royal. He pulled a deed from his desk, signing with a flourish that belied the tremor. Build something better. For her sake. Emily, hovering in the doorway, tears silent. We accepted, not for empire, but redemption, folding the acreage into a co-op model. Scott's tech tracking carbon credits. My audits ensuring equity for local crews. Harlan watched from a rocker on the veranda as surveyors staked lines, nodding approval at Hybrid Pines weed plant. Your old man hated, he chuckled one afternoon, oxygen mask dangling. But he'd be wrong. Palliative care came gentle. We rotated shifts. Scott reading him Hemingway aloud, The Old Man and the Sea. Irony not lost, while I fielded calls from oncologists. Emily and Clara cooking gumbo that filled the house with spice and stories. Harlan softened in fragments, Tales of boyhood pranks with Dad. A confession over bourbon about that boarding school crush. Very, cause boys like us didn't get happy endings. Scott forgave publicly, privately in my arms. Too late. But it's something. He passed in April. Magnolias unfurling like flags at half-mast. The funeral was simple. Riverside. Fiddles soft. Eulogies from unlikely mouths. Mom on shared battles. Me on legacies rewritten. Scott spoke last. Voice steady. He taught me love's a fight worth losing sometimes. But winning? That's grace. Grief bonded us deeper. But tested too. Scott retreating to workaholic binges. Me overcompensating with house projects. Hammering fences till blisters bled. A D.C. conference pulled me away in May, leaving him to solo a co-op launch. I returned to a quiet house. Takeout cold on the counter. Note, out with them. Talk later. Later was midnight. Him stumbling and tipsy. Eyes red. Missed you. Too much. We made love then, slow. Reaffirming. Bodies mapping familiar territories without rush or roll. Afterward. Tangled sheets. He traced my collarbone. What if we expand, adopt, or foster? Make our own legacy. The idea lodged. Warm and wild. We researched. Agencies. Home studies. Nerves jangling at the intimacy of it. Two dads from timber trash. Scott joked during paperwork. Will be a cliché, but hope cracked under scrutiny. The home visit in July went south. Social worker eyeing our photos. Doc kiss framed by the mantel. Asking pointedly about stability in high-profile relationships. Scott's temper flared post-report. They think we're a risk? After everything. I soothed with logic, appeals, second opinions, but resentment simmered. Fights reignited, me pragmatic, him idealistic, accusations flying like shrapnel. You're ashamed, he hurled one night, storming the garden. Still hiding behind professionalism, the slam echoed my deepest fear. I followed, rain soaking us, words raw. I'm terrified. Scott, of failing them, of us breaking under it. He turned, drenched, pulling me close. Then we bend. Together, we pivoted to volunteering, mentoring queer youth at a center. Story hours where kids devoured our happily irregular tales. Joy crept back, a boy's drawing of us as superheroes. Capes fluttering. It wasn't blood, but healed. Fall brought full circle. Mom's wedding to the judge in Savannah. Us best men in matching bow ties. Toasting under that live oak. Emily announced her pregnancy, Clara's donor. Their choice, sparking teary hugs and plans for Auntie Judy's. Harlan's co-op thrived. First harvest funding scholarships for next-gen loggers. As winter loomed, Scott and I escaped to the plantation, now community land, cabins for retreats. We hiked the trails at dusk, his hand in mine, stopping at the river overlook where it all began. Remember the Jeep? He murmured, nuzzling my neck. Thunder Road, I echoed, spinning him for a dip. Laughter bubbling. Best detour ever. Straightening. He knelt again, not proposal, but promise, a locket with Dad's watch fob inside. Engraved choose noise. For the family we make. Tears blurred, stars emerging. Every day, back in Atlanta, life layered on, youth center expansions, App Global, my book deal on Southern rewilding. Conflicts came, policy clashes, media storms, but we navigated with therapy tools. Date nights mandatory. Betrayals? Forgiven. Folded into strength. One muggy June dawn. 3 years post-vows. Our son arrived. Foster placement turned forever. A wiry 8-year-old named Theo with Scott's smirk and my stubborn streak. He called us Pops and Chief Garden wars over tomato thieves ending in pie fights. Watching them wrestle in the yard. Theo, crowing victory. Scott caught my eye. Grin eternal. Shattered plans. Huh. Best wreckage ever. I pulled them close. Heart full. In America's messy heart. We'd carved ours raw. Real. Resounding. Not perfect, but profoundly ours. And that, finally, was enough.